Ladies and gentlemen, it is currently October 25th, 2024.
Ha! Okay, I forgot how old this video actually is. Just roll with it. I've been kind of holding on to this one for a long time. I don't really know why, but release the content, right? Or whatever the saying is. Anyways, enjoy.
And in this video, it's a pretty special day, because I'm going to show you not one, not two, not even three, but 4 different chess games. All coming from the username Goobs420 on chess.com, who is, without a doubt, the most ridiculously boneheaded chess player I've ever encountered. And if you couldn't tell, that was my best Levy Rosman impression. So Levy, I know you're not watching this video, but if you somehow happen to stumble across my channel and find this, welcome. Also, train me, please. Thanks. Hence the wolf tank top. I was trying to be like Levy, you know, always wearing tank tops when there's nothing to show underneath. So for those of you who are wondering, yes, I'm still addicted to chess, unfortunately. I play pretty much every day. Usually it's when I'm waiting for files to download or edits to render or other extremely boring stuff that I unfortunately have to suffer through anyways. But sometimes I just play. And that's where it becomes dangerous. I use it as a procrastination tactic. I start losing and then I tilt, and then that makes me lose even more, which makes me tilt even more. It's definitely a vicious cycle. And I'm so addicted at this point that I'm actually considering making a whole separate channel just for streaming chess. Because I waste so much time on it anyways that I might as well try to profit off of it, right? Hey, don't hate the player, hate capitalism. Okay? And something I've learned while coping with this addiction is just how up and down my experience can be. Because while I thought for a long time that I was plateauing hard at 1100 in all 3 modes of Rapid, Blitz, and Bullet, I recently just hit my highest elo ever in Blitz at 1204. And yeah, it's been like that for a really long time because I have not touched it since then because I'm terrified of losing again. 1200 was a milestone that I didn't even think was remotely possible 6 months ago. And despite all the toxic traits that this godforsaken 1,000-year-old game has brought out of me, this slow and steady improvement has encouraged me to keep going. But it hasn't always been easy. 2 big things that I've learned in my experience with chess, specifically chess.com. Number 1, it's gambling. If you think about the concept of gambling, how it's literally possible to lose all of your life savings in one day, but then win it all back and more with just one lucky roll, draw, whatever you want to call it, that is chess.com. I get into these modes where I'm on a hot streak and I feel invincible, and then I keep playing, and the game, as it's supposed to do, pairs me up with harder opponents. And when those opponents start beating me over and over and over again, I somehow convince myself that I can bounce back to the glory that I once had, or something. And this has literally never once been the case. It's the classic quit while you're ahead scenario that my fucked up brain doesn't seem to fully accept. But I've learned that it's the exact same positive feedback cycle as gambling. When you start winning, you don't want to stop. And then when you start losing, you somehow convince yourself that you can get it all back somehow. Number 2. Puzzles actually help. Listen, like any other bottom-of-the-barrel plebeian chess player, I was pretty skeptical of chess puzzles at first. Like, how does this made-up scenario that I probably will never encounter in a real game help me with playing actual games? But that's the kicker. It's all about pattern recognition, because these exact scenarios are actually pretty rare. In fact, there are more possible chess games than there are atoms in the observable universe. And I'm just finding that out right now, and yeah, that's real. But as it turns out, there are parts of those scenarios that pop up randomly in not one, but several games that I play in a day. And when I actually succeed in recognizing these patterns, I can take advantage of this situation and I can go from a drawing or even losing position to a completely winning one. Or vice versa.
He blundered! He blunders! Oh, gods do bleed! Oh, my bad!
Now, these 2 realizations have helped me a bunch in continuing to improve. I haven't really been learning any new openings, I've been pretty lazy about chess theory in general, but now that I know that online chess is like gambling for me, I can actually recognize the situations in which I just need to stop. And now that I know that puzzles actually work, I do them every morning. Even when I don't play chess in a day, I don't think I've missed my puzzles in a while. All this to say that today, I'm going to show you 4 different games that I've played in the last month or so, one of which exemplifies just how boneheaded 1,000+ elo games can be. Another shows how pattern recognition can make chess genius appear at any time, even if it's unintentional, and the rest of the game was shit. And the third one, well, You'll see. Also, the fourth one was added pretty recently, and I just added it to my bookmarks one day, and I honestly have no idea what this game is, so it's gonna be a surprise for both of us. And at this point, I've been rambling for way too long, so let's just get into it. All right, so this right here is our first game. As you can see, I am Goobs420 at the bottom. I guess this was when I was at 10:07 in Blitz. Feels like a distant memory at this point, because I'm so much better now, obviously. As you can see, with the time control, this is a Blitz game, so all the Blitz games I've been playing have been 3 minutes with a 2-second time back, which means every time that you make a move, you get 2 seconds back. I think the reason I mostly do that is because when it comes to time scramble situations, you won't really lose on time, but it also kind of backfires on me sometimes, like in this game, but we will see. I'm gonna start out with 1E4 because that is always what I start with.
Hey, Editor Gabe here, and I just wanted to jump in here and say that the game that I'm about to show you is over 90 moves long, and I go into an insane amount of detail for every move, even though it was a Blitz game. So I'm going to spare you the horror of sitting through like 47 minutes of me talking about chess, and I'm just going to give you a quick little, fun little montage of everything that happened in this game. Okay, because seriously, if I didn't, this video would be close to an hour long, and I know no one wants that. Not even my biggest supporter, Cumbong238. What's up, dude? All right, enough of that. Back to the video.
I play this opening with black almost every single time, and then that's just a free pawn. Now the next logical move, Manelek Munumbumba. Chess is weird. Anyways, nothing has really happened. This is kind of the transitional opening period knowledge to tap. My opponent has barely thought. Great move by me. I know. I push the pawn, and we're gonna go to an endgame. This opens up my queen. A sequence of bad moves, I guess you could say. My opponent right here is literally just trying to flag me. I decided Rook F8, which is a clear blunder.
Shuffling rooks,
no, I'm saying don't give up this pawn. Rook D8, which makes the pawn can't take. So I hang my rook to the king twice. This is a very simple endgame. And finally, the nail in the coffin. Queen to G3, checkmate. It was a sloppy game, for sure. But that doesn't even begin to describe how sloppy some of these games are. So let's move on to game 2. So this is another Blitz game. As you can see, I dipped even lower at this point to 990. It's probably one of the lowest elos I've had in Blitz in a while. I was probably tilting at this point, so keep that in mind. Opponent here, Lucas Agustin Vitor from Argentina, is a 1008 in Blitz, and we're gonna duke it out. I'm with black here. And like I told you guys in the last game, my favorite opening with black is the Alekhine's Defense in response to E4. Now let's see if my opponent does that. They do play E4, so of course I play Knight F6, and this is the Alekhine's Defense. It's just not a good opening for black. I don't know why I play it. I gotta figure out some other theory, but that's besides the point. Opponent now plays the Scandinavian variation, which to me this is the most dry and boring variation of this, because I essentially just go D5, they go E5, I go knight up to D7, and actually there is an even more boring variation of this where my opponent just takes, I take back, they take back, I take back, and then it goes something like D4, E5. If they take, it's actually not that bad of a move, even though I don't allow my opponent to castle. It's really not that bad for them apparently, and I've seen this a lot more recently. So my opponent pushes to E5, which easily transposes into a French defense, which is a lot of the times what I play when I get to this point. So I move my knight back to knight FD7. I go here, strengthening this structure here. My opponent plays D4, and then I play C5. So at this point, we have all the way transposed to a, I believe it's the French defense Steinitz variation. They move their bishop to B5. Now this is the last book move, as you can see. And neither of us have really used any time. So we both know what's going on here, right? We have both played this opening many times, probably. And you know, if you're an E4 player, you have to be ready for these kinds of openings. The logical move is what I play next, which is A6, basically telling the dude, hey, you're either going to take or you're going to move back, and I'm going to get more space advantage. They decide to take, and I take with the knight, which apparently is not the best move. The best move is to take back with the bishop. And I think when I first saw this review, I saw that move, and I've started playing this now. I don't really know if it's done much, but I think the whole point is, you know, you can get more space advantage. You can move your bishop out to stop the king from castling. Opponent castles. I take C takes D4. They take with the queen, which is definitely the best move. Again, I haven't used any time at all, but I've seen this structure a lot, and I really did think that this was the best move because it just puts tempo on the queen. Apparently it's not. Apparently it's just better to put my queen out and get it active. I castle here. I'm not scared of this queen. Yeah, come over here, do something. They move their bishop out. Hold on, I gotta take a drink of water because this is... I don't know why, but this is like really dehydrating me. They move their bishop out. I decide to put my queen behind it, which, you know, still not the best move, but not a bad move either. They take, I take back with the knight. And I think the idea here is to kind of move into here where my knight can't really be kicked unless this knight moves. That type of stuff, but I'm probably going to keep it here for a little bit. I move my bishop out, they move their knight out, and then I move my bishop out, pressuring this, but it's also not a great move. They do take with the knight, and I take back with the pawn, opening up this file for my rook. I'm feeling pretty good at this point. We've started to think a little bit more. I'm still up on time against my opponent. Opponent moves rook f to c1, and this is where I decide to move my knight. I decide to pressure the queen here. So I pressure the queen moves back. I decide, oh, I'm gonna pressure the queen again. But then the queen goes here, so I just have to move back. So now we're pretty much in the exact same position. You know, I just kind of wasted a move. Queen moves back again, so we go to the exact same position. At this point, my first reaction as we're watching live is to move my my pawn up here, trying to bait the opponent into taking en passant so I can take with the rook. Is that what I do? That is not what I do. I just move my king over for literally no reason. And then I pressure the queen again. There's some idea here that if the queen takes, right, I have this move here. So that was the idea of this move. I had to think about it a little bit because I'm stupid. So they didn't take the pawn, and they instead still allowed me to make this move. But I take with the knight, which is actually the best move because it pressures the queen. So, and it allows a discover check on the king once I move my knight. So this is actually a great move by me. And here is where it gets pretty crazy. Now, as you can see, I have almost 2 minutes on the clock. My opponent has less than a minute. So I'm way up on time. I have a really good position. I'm playing as black, so I'm feeling great. My opponent decides to take this pawn. My opponent says, okay, let's trade off these queens. If I take, opponent takes. But then we're back to even. Instead, I played the beautiful, the not brilliant, but the great move, knight to h3 check.
Wow.
And this is a great move because it's a double check. So my knight can't be taken. The king has to move to one of these two squares. If he moves to this square, it's just GG's. That's checkmate. That is checkmate. The queen is bolstered and supported by the knight. The king can't move anywhere. It's GG's. So instead, my opponent is forced to move to this square. But here is where that pattern recognition comes in. I literally remembered in one of my puzzles, I was like, oh my God, I have smothered mate. Smothered mate.
A smothered checkmate is a tactical pattern in chess where the checkmate is delivered by a knight, and the opposing king is unable to escape due to being surrounded by its own pieces. In this scenario, the king is smothered, leaving no available escape squares.
And so using my knowledge from chess puzzles in the past, and feeling amazing, I play the brilliant queen to g1 check. And this is a great move because my opponent cannot take back with the king. He has to take with the rook. So I'm sacrificing an entire queen because I know it'll lead to checkmate. Opponent's only move, rook takes g1, and then the beautiful knight to f2, smothered mate. Well, this is the first time I got a mate like this, and it was like seriously one of the happiest moments that I can remember in recent memory because look at this. The king is blocked in by his own pieces. It's just a simple knight check, but it's game over. That's one of the reasons I love chess. But this next game is one of the reasons that chess is just stupid sometimes. So let's move on. Good game to my opponent. Shout out to Argentina. But moving on to the third and almost final game. Now this is actually a bullet game. Now I'm playing this game at 11:45 ELO in bullet, which if you don't know what bullet is, it's just a shorter version of blitz. It's basically 1 minute. The time controls are usually 1 minute with 1 second time back once you move, or just 1 minute with no time back. I've been playing the 1 minute with 1 second back because I'm really just not that fast. My brain just doesn't move that fast. I try to use the time control that works in my favor the most. This is one of my highest ever ELOs in bullet. I believe at this point, yeah, my current bullet is 1021. So I've dipped a lot. It's just been a roller coaster, man. It's been a freaking roller coaster. Look at that. Up and down and up and down and up and down. And at this point, I'm getting a little bit sick of bullet. I think I just have to start learning the game more, start getting better by playing slower games and slower time controls. But now, as you can see from the evaluation here, there's a lot of crazy moves in here. I kept it pretty consistent until this point when I blundered, and then until this point when my opponent blundered, and I just won the game. So let's see what happens. My opponent starts with d4. Now, against d4, I love to play the move c5, which is just undeniably pretty scrubby. It's just not a great move because it's giving up this pawn with the expectation that I can play e6 and pressure this pawn again. There's a fun little trap here that if the opponent tries to protect the pawn with b4, I can play a5. The opponent doesn't want to take this because then it will lead to an immediate check, and there's this, and then I can take this pawn back. So to not lose this pawn with check, the opponent plays this instead, saying, oh, I'm totally fine, right? But then I can just take, and after takes, queen f6 just loses a piece for the opponent, because if they play knight here, it's still a check. If they play bishop here, I can just take, and then I win 2 pieces. So the only move here is actually to sacrifice the knight and then give up this check. Opponent can go here, and then I can just move my queen back, something like that. That's called the Benoni trap. This is the old Benoni opening, the old Benoni defense, and my opponent ignores it. As you do. You know, this is probably one of the best moves you can play because you're basically saying, I don't care about your gambit. I don't want to get into any stupid shenanigans that you have to offer. And at this point, I actually try to set up a second gambit by playing knight f6. My opponent plays c4, and I play b5. Now, this is the Benko gambit. This is one of the most stupid but fun gambits that I play, because essentially you're baiting the opponent into taking, and then once they take, you're going to literally give up another pawn. At this point, if the opponent takes, you completely ignore this pawn. You just play g6 and develop your bishop, and then you have this strong diagonal, and you have this entire area of the board just kind of open to make some moves. So you're giving up 2 pawns for this gambit. Now, of course, that's not what happens in the game. I offer the gambit, and my opponent does not take, even though it is the best move to take the gambit. Instead of pushing, which I probably should have done naturally, I defend this pawn right here, and I just get this nice little connect 3, and I'm basically saying, okay, I'm accepting the position I'm in right now, and I'm trying to defend it as best as I can. Opponent plays a3, which just doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, I really just don't see the point in that move, but that's okay. I play g6, trying to get my bishop to fianchetto, and this is kind of like the whole idea of the opening in the first place. When we get to this position is so that I can have this fianchetto bishop and I can have a good time. Knight f3. I do take at this point, so I finally realize, hey, maybe I should just take this pawn. Opponent takes back, best move, and I do fianchetto my bishop. Now at this point, opponent castles. I go a5, which I believe the point here is to put the bishop on a6, just pinning their bishop to their rook so that they're forced to trade, and essentially just develop more of my pieces, either with my knight out or my rook out. I do have to do a little bit more research on this opening because as much as I love the Benko gambit, I have no idea how to play it. So I keep playing it without knowing how to play it, and that's usually what happens with 1,000 Elo players. Now my opponent doesn't care that I just push my pawn, so I go through with my plan and I put my bishop on a6. They decide to check me, which, okay, sure, but I just block with my queen, and you know, this isn't one of those scenarios where you can take and then I have to take back with my king, like forcing me not to castle. Like if they just took here, it would actually not be great because I can just develop one of my pieces and take back at the same time. I do move my queen up, and they go here, which again doesn't make a whole ton of sense because yes, my queen is pinned to my king, but I can just take your bishop. You know, that's like, you didn't really achieve anything there, which is exactly what happens. And I get a great move for that. Thanks, chess.com. Opponent takes back with the knight, which is the best move. And here I take this pawn, which looks free. It looks like a free pawn. I just take this pawn, but it's actually a big mistake because why is this a blunder? Why is this a blunder? Knight e5. Right. And then when I move my queen out of the way, this is an actual real discovered attack, double check, hitting everything. Yeah, okay. I see now. But of course my opponent misses that. They instead play e4, and I go back and this is actually a great move because I'm tempoing the queen and I also move my knight to safety. Yes, opponent does go for this double check, which has been always an option. But in this case, you know, my queen's still protected by many many pieces, so it does leave my rook to hang, but at this point I'm like, all right, this is bullet. I'm explaining all of these moves in detail, but keep in mind, we're making all of these moves in like less than a second, so it's kind of just all boneheaded. It's kind of all doesn't make any sense at all. I'm being checked by the knight, so I can't take the queen because I'd have to take the knight instead, but I can't take the knight with the queen because the queen is pinned. This forces me to move my king, which apparently this is another great move, even though it gives up the rook, because, you know, if we go takes, and then takes, and takes, apparently this is still even. I don't really understand why. I guess I have an extra pawn for the rook. I don't know. We could get deep into the weeds here, but this is a bullet game, so I don't care. They do that exact same sequence. They take with check, I take back, they take my rook, I then, for some reason, wait, what? Oh, God. Oh, Gabriel. Instead of just simply taking this knight back, right, which of course I see when I'm in the evaluation, instead I move my other knight out, saying, oh, I'm gonna get your knight here, but they could easily just take this knight with check. So that made zero sense at all. Again, we're playing bullets, so I give myself a little bit of a buffer here, I guess, but that's exactly what they do. They put me in check again, I move my king, and at this point, I am down bad. I am down 5 points of material. So this is a situation that you never want to be in, especially not as black, because you're already at a disadvantage as black. I have 36 seconds on the clock, my opponent has 37. How am I going to get this to a point where I can either A, flag them and make them run out of time, or B, somehow get them to blunder, and then we're back to even again. I move my rook up. Again, I'm just like, all right, I just need to start making moves. I need to start making moves. This is a check. King moves out of the way. Does literally nothing. I protect my bishop here. And knight moves back. We're just shuffling pieces a little bit. Okay, we trade off some pieces. We're just shuffling. We're shuffling. I protect my knight here, but that's not a great move because they can just take that back, but then I move it back, so it's all, and then I get this pawn, so we're kind of going back and forth, but again, I'm not gaining an advantage back. I'm still down 5 points of material. It's a pretty dire situation. Opponent pushes a pawn forward, and at this point, they're just trying to trade off material. Now here, that's a weird move, right? Because I can literally just take the knight. But let's see if I did, because I really doubt that I did. Yeah, I go check instead. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the moment that defines an era. This is the moment that makes someone who really loved chess want to quit and die. Because in this position, my opponent has many options, right? My opponent can go here, which not a great move because you're opening up, you know, lines for this check that forks the king and the rook, but at the end of the day, you're still surviving. My opponent can also go to either of these squares, which would be totally fine and completely keeps the advantage no matter what. Actually, this one, okay, this is not a great move, I guess. Why is that? Well, I can either take this or I just have like a forced repetition of moves. So yeah. Or my opponent goes here and literally there's nothing I can do. I'm basically just, it's completely winning, right? It's completely winning if my opponent simply goes here. But instead of king to g2, my opponent plays king f3, which loses the game on the spot to knight g5 checkmate. And this is kind of a crazy checkmate because you can see like the pawns are covering this square, the knight's covering, you know, the square that the king is on and this square, so these are cut off, and he's cut off up top too. So he just walks right into checkmate. And this is so tough. I feel my opponent's pain here. I've been in the exact same position, but with 12 seconds on the clock, I find it, and hallelujah, going from a completely lost position to winning the game on the spot. Man, sometimes I love chess. Most of the time I hate it, but sometimes I love it. So that was this game. Shout out to my opponent, Harris Simmerford, Indian player. But what a ridiculous game. Down 7 points of material. 7 points of material. And my opponent just blunders checkmate. That's what happens. Especially in bullet, that's what happens in chess. And sometimes that's what keeps me going playing bullet, even though it's a terrible waste of my time. Now we're going to get to this game that I completely forgot about. And I really don't know how this is going to go, so we're going to see it. Yeah, let's go back to see all of the accuracies of all of these games. This one, I was still at 81.6, but there were probably 20 or so moves in the end game. I mean, this is literally I apparently played like a 1550, shout out. This is a 92 move game. This is like one of the longest games I've ever played. So there's probably like 20 or so moves in there where, you know, I'm making moves that don't really require much thought and are easy to make in the end game. And I still ended up with only 81%. So all things considered, not a great game. This one, 92.2% Smothered Mate, one of the best games I've ever played. Classic. This one, 85%, so not too bad either. And, you know, I was still losing terribly, so shout out to my opponent for keeping it that close for that long. And this last one, also a very short game, but as you can see, 54% accuracy. I played like a 300. So I don't even know why I saved this one. Let's see what happens. I'm playing with black. My opponent is Schmosby99, also from India, shout out. And again, this is a bullet game, so we're playing 1-1, which means 1 minute with 1 second each time you move. Let's start this game with e4, and you already know what I'm gonna play. Knight f6. My opponent does not know the theory. They play queen f3, which already off the bat is just a massive inaccuracy. I think this is one of those points where I was so in the mode of tilting and just like not even caring about my games that I didn't even really stop and think about any of my moves. So at this point I play d5, which, you know, just gives the advantage right back. My opponent takes, I take back, and at this point I'm just like, all right, yeah, just trade off pieces, make it a boring game, whatever. Until this move where I'm forking the queen and the bishop, so obviously if the bishop takes, I just take the queen. And then I'm up pretty big. So instead, what does my opponent do in this position? With both of their pieces under attack, they move the queen back. And that's a blunder. Why is that a blunder? What's the best move here? It just takes, and then d4. Oh, yeah, because look at that. My poor knight. So I was going to lose a knight if my opponent played perfectly. Of course they didn't. They played d3, so just one block off, just one square off. Maybe it was a misclick. I don't know. We're both playing bullet. We're both playing fast, so it's possible my opponent just was meant to play this move and just didn't. But luckily, I... Again, we're in this position where I blundered twice in a row. I take here, they miss it, and then I miss it again, and then they also miss it because... it was just better to move this one because I have this counterplay of taking here, but then they have the very easy to find queen e3, and my thing is still done, right? Like I'm not getting this knight back, and in fact the knight is the only thing that's protecting the bishop. So just a terrible move all around, really. What I probably should have done is just taken this knight. Okay, I guess not. So what happens in the game? We instead have castles. They take the knight. And of course, I completely miss that my bishop is now hanging because the knight was the only thing protecting it. And I go rook e8. So going from, again, pretty drawn position, but it's pretty dire straits for me here. I'm thinking, okay, if I just move my rook to e8 and they decide to take this bishop, I can just take their queen with check. Not thinking about the fact that they can just take my bishop for free. Opponent takes, I get this check. They move their king out of the way, and I move my queen. And now they start to make this weird king walk, which doesn't make a ton of sense. Like, if you're going to be moving your king again, why move it to a place where it can easily be checked again, right? So, yeah, the best move would be to move your king back because now there's no checks and there's no danger and you're still up 3 points of material. Instead, my opponent moves here. And I see this check and I immediately go for it because my brain doesn't work correctly. Opponent can still move back here and be completely fine. But instead, my opponent, Schmosby9, decides to move their king to b3. I mean, look at the evaluation bar after this. It's not even that he blundered. It's just a missed win. Because after going here, the evaluation completely changes to my favorite 5.2 points of material. And the reason is something that I did not find. I think my opponent is basically mating themselves here because if I just find the move c5, you can't move anywhere. Your king is stuck. I mean, you can go here, but then I win your queen, you know? Like there's so many terrible moves you can make here. I mean, let's say you sack your queen, yes, but I still have a 5 point of material and, you know, you move here again, there's this check and it's just bad news. So my opponent moves their king to b3. Okay. Do I find the winning move? No, I do not. I play a5 instead, like a complete idiot. Although it's not a terrible move. The idea is to move to a4 and then get this check. And I mean, this let's say my opponent makes a random move like this. This would be checkmate, right? So I'm trying to get this pawn mate. I'm just blinded by the idea that it would look cool or something like that. And what do I do here? What does my opponent do here? They do play a move that allows me to get this pawn mate. That's it? That's the game? That's not even that fun to watch. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry I showed you guys that. Like, what is this? Like, yes, you just blundered the whole game away when you had a huge advantage. Like that's all this is. I guess it just goes to show you, like, chess is just one of those games. Sometimes you win and you feel great, and sometimes you go out like a buster. To quote one of my favorite video game players of all time, Mango.
I realize life is this crazy, mystical thing, and sometimes you just go out like a buster.
And this move, knight to g5, is the buster move, because it allows me to play the badass a4 pawn checkmate. I mean, that's really all I got for you guys. I hope that last game wasn't as unsatisfying as I found it, but maybe you had a good time watching it. Let me know if you want more videos like this, because again, this is like not my normal content. Although I am addicted to chess and I love it and I hate it at the same time, I want to be able to turn into content somehow, because otherwise, what am I doing with my life?
And on that note, I actually did start streaming a couple times on my channel recently just to test out OBS, see how terrible I still am at chess, and see if people like it. So I know this is different, this is new, and you guys don't like change, I get it. But if it happens to be something that you happen to maybe, like and enjoy and stuff, then let me know in the comments and maybe I'll do it some more, but probably not, because I don't care about your opinion. All right, back to the video.
Chess is this wonderful, beautiful, fantastic, tormenting, ridiculous, awesome thing. It's been around for thousands of years, and yet here I am at the bottom echelon of players, just trying to fight my way out, just trying to figure out how I can get that brilliant move and feel good about myself again and get that little boost of serotonin. And those games exemplified that a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Go off, do something fun, I guess, with your day, and I'll see you later. All right, bye-bye.